right. Now we're going to look at the Edge of Fate exotic armor early. This is also going to be a mukbang stream because I'm hungry. So sorry in advance, YouTube.
This was shot in front of a live studio audience at twitch.tv/Sweatcicle.
Video has all dialogue and subtitles turned off to minimize story spoilers. Gameplay shown is from an early build of the Edge of Fate and is subject to change.
I got you guys a bite. Open up.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of I Played with New Exotics Before You, Nana Nana Boo Boo, where today we are going over the exotic armor that I got to play with at a preview event for the Edge of Fate expansion. I don't know if this is the only exotic armor coming in the expansion. I did not look at the collections tab, so it might be, it might not. I'm not actually sure. Titans,
come on, we need spoilers.
With you because you have what I think is the most hype exotic. Since the advent of the throwing hammer, there has been but one request for it: the ability to recall the hammer from the ground to your hand. Bungie has finally obliged via the...
Okay, let me just stop you right there. Guys, over 3 months for a Thor collaboration skin in the Eververse store that we're going to charge $30 for. 3 months? 3.5? I could totally see it happening. Next week.
The Melis Panoplia. But it is not quite as simple as just hitting a button and having it come back to you. First, you must become a Forge Master. You become a Forge Master by either picking up a Fire Sprite or getting 3 rapid solar kills. Keep in mind, this is with the exotic on. This is not an intrinsic thing within solar now. This is on the exotic. This is going to place the Forge Master buff on you, but it will not activate until you throw your hammer. After it is thrown, the timer will start to tick down from, I think it's a 12-second buff. So, after you throw your hammer, you will be able to recall it. But it needs to land on the ground or hit an enemy before you can do it. So if you throw that thing into Narnia, it is probably gone until your next cooldown.
So you're telling me when I miss my hammer and throw it into the void... Low-key, after hearing about this, I don't think this is going to be as good as... it looks.
But
it looks
upon
cool.
hitting an enemy, you will enable the ability to do a perfect recall. To perform a perfect recall, you will listen for a little like ding noise that happens shortly after hitting an enemy. It's the exact same timing every time. If you nail it, you're also going to trigger additional effects like AoE damage to anything around the hammer as it comes back to you, and you'll also extend the timer on Forge Master, which is what enables you to do the recall in the first place.
Okay, so realistically, what is the point of running this over Synthos, though? Because Synthos, you get extra damage, and like 90% of the time when you throw a hammer, you get the benefits by just being in the enemy's face. You get your hammer back immediately anyways, and then you're already in a sunspot. It's like, why would I do this, get the hammer pack, and then run over to the sunspot? I really feel like this is just a gimmick exotic.
If you chain together perfect recalls, you'll be able to keep this rolling for as long as there are enemies to hit and as long as you are throwing the hammer pretty often.
Think about the aura.
You also appear to get a good amount of bonus tracking when you're a Forge Master, which makes super far away hits much easier to perform. This is a really fun effect. Hitting the perfect timing to cause some explosions is fun. It feels good to time it right. It feels good when it comes back to your hand. Everything about this experience feels pretty enjoyable. On the Legendary World tier, when you get the engine rolling, the hammer can really put a dent into some tougher enemies out there. Like, I'm bopping these big targets in a couple of throws. Combine that with sunspots and the perfect recall explosion, and you can kill off groups of, you know, clustered up enemies without too much issue. That being said, this is definitely not the most efficient way of killing stuff in the game if you are someone who cares about that.
Yeah.
You gotta throw the hammer. You let it hit something. You wait for the timing. You hit the timing. You wait for the hammer to come back to you. You throw it again. Rinse, repeat. Sometimes you get a big explosion with a lot of kills. Sometimes there's just not that much there, or it doesn't really connect. And there is a lot of stuff that you can do with that level of time investment. I don't see many worlds where continuously bonking something with a hammer and recalling it ends up being the top DPS option, although I'm certainly open to the idea, but I wasn't expecting it to do that, so that's okay. When I was grouped up in a team, two things happened. Number one, we were playing on an easier difficulty and things just died super fast, not really giving me the time to enjoy the hammer experience. Or two, we were playing on a much harder difficulty and nothing would die to my hammer. I will say that we had the difficulty turned up considerably here in this footage. Like, the enemies are 40 or 50 levels above us. But at this level of difficulty, the hammer itself felt close to worthless outside of the lowest tiers of enemies in Devil's Lair.
You have to be
or
on
the Whisper.
Synthos.
The reason I have barely any footage of me throwing a hammer in these upper difficulty pieces of content is because I learned very quickly that it wasn't even close to worth it. Now,
I just thought about this. This exotic is almost like a worse Ashen Wake. Because Ashen Wake, you just throw fusions and stuff explodes anyways, and you get your nade back. Is it not? I haven't really used Ashen Wake that much, but I'm pretty sure that's how that works.
full admission, I was playing Devil's Lair with no aspects or fragments equipped because they got unequipped, and I didn't realize it for a little while. But someone else was playing with all that stuff equipped, and they had a very similar experience. And I also ran a different piece of content with my aspects, and I had a very similar experience. So for now, I would advise some caution when running Hammer in these super high tier pieces of content, and when the expansion's actually out, we can reevaluate. As of this preview event, I would use this exotic in more solo environments or, you know, mid-tier.
I think it's just one of those that might be fun if you're
fully
bored.
Enjoy the experience. Legendary difficulty felt great, but as you climb, I imagine the appeal will start to wane a little bit, so we'll see. I'd also be stacking up a considerable amount of the melee stat, which is a whole other conversation that I have in another video, which is live probably right now as well, so go check out that video after this one, ltdstore.com. Warlocks. I would say that you got one of the better exotics that I got to play with. It's just maybe not as fun as a hammer that recalls to your hand. It is a Hellion-based exotic, so solar or prismatic, where your Hellion is improved. It deals more damage the farther it travels, and after 20 meters, which I got to easily determine thanks to the shooting range, it will explode and split into multiple projectiles, which also scorch. This exotic essentially gives you an automatic ignition machine without having to think too much.
Actually seems kind of sick.
But as a result, there's not much in the way of interaction with this exotic. When you drop a rift, assuming
I feel like this is going to be like really good for passive damage.
A Hellion, and it'll just be better. That's it.
Bro, this is gonna be really good for that Warlock build with the tractor shotgun with Song of Flame. This is gonna make that build even better. Which that build is like, I mean, you're not quite able to keep up with like a top damage rotation, but it's still really good damage for literally just running a shotgun and a tractor and a super. Yeah, but you got to be in their face. I mean, this is true. I know you get bonus damage from being farther away, but I still think it'll be good.
That's the whole thing.
I could be wrong.
But it is quite noticeably better, especially in thanks to the ability to Scorch and the ability to do some AoE and provide some ignitions. You could also combine this with a new perk coming to the game called...
Come on,
Burning
Datto.
Ambition.
There we go.
Which scorches already scorched targets even more. Within Solar, you're going to want to hunt down for some Scorch-related, maybe Ignition-related fragments. I'm looking very intently at Singeing. I'm looking at Char, maybe even Blistering, Eruption, Ashes.
It seems like it's going to be a crazy Solar season.
Here. I know we're not taking any sort of Radiant or Restoration stuff, but, like, we take that for literally everything, dude. Like, wow, Torches again. Wow, Solace, Benevolence, and Empyrean. What's this dude going to think of next? Like, if you're going to do that, just throw on Speaker's Sight and call it a day. Let's ignite some stuff. Let's scorch some stuff, you know? For Prismatic, something like Hellion and Feed the Void should net you 5 fragment slots in the test build. I only had 3. I don't know if that's intended or not. Seems kind of brutal if intended, but Prismatic only has so many ignition or solar options, so you do need to spread your wings a little bit to pad out the rest of the build. This doesn't require any specific weapon types, technically speaking, but you're going to want some light and some dark damage, and you're going to be totally fine on the light damage. I'll keep it short and sweet for this one. Effective, but not really the most exciting. It is a set and forget style of exotic. It doesn't really require that much interaction, but some people like that, so they can just focus on their gameplay as much as possible.
Yep.
Hunters, you have an exotic similar in vibe to Titan in that it is kind of extra. Some of you might remember the Whirling Maelstrom build from a little while back with Sir Terracnes, the helmet. Well, Moirai feels like the Whirling Maelstrom exotic. When you throw your threaded spike at a tangle, you will activate the tangle, and it will also bring a tangle back to you if you catch the threaded spike. If you don't catch it, you'll just get a little more melee energy than usual.
Ew.
As you can imagine, this will enable you to have many Whirling Maelstroms active, like 2 or 3 at a single time, if not even more. You do need a little bit of setup for it, though. Remember that to spawn a tangle, you need to kill a target
I
affected
don't know.
by
This
some
could
kind
be
of a
good,
strand
but
deep.
when was... Dude, I couldn't tell you the last time I saw somebody run somebody on Strand Hunter. Not Prismatic. Literally just Strand Hunter. I cannot tell you the last time I saw someone use that in PvE. I really can't.
Debuff. But that can just be your threaded spike, in which you could then Gambler's Dodge to get it back, throwing it at the tangle that you hopefully just spawned, activate a Maelstrom, get your melee, and a tangle back, and then you throw that tangle to activate another Maelstrom, and then you grapple over to it over and over for free grapple melees. I didn't get to mess around with this in the shooting range, so in terms of pure damage numbers, I don't have that for you. But what I do have are some comments on the practicality of doing all of this. I only used it in solo play because I just didn't get to play on a Hunter that much, and it did prove pretty effective. Although I couldn't optimize it 100% of the time because of my limited loadouts and my limited time. But, like I said, it is extra. There are a couple of steps to setting up this combo and all that, and you might end up doing a lot for your Maelstroms to just be nowhere near the enemy that you're trying to hit. But then
Yeah.
other times, everything lines up perfectly, and you have like 2 or 3 Maelstroms on top of a big target while you're grapple melee
The
spamming
Beyblades are
everything
cool,
else,
but
and
I
it's
just
amazing.
don't think it's worth the
I
work.
should also mention that the artifact, which will be our artifact for 6 months at a time, as opposed to the usual 3, will be featuring Strand somewhat heavily in addition to Solar and Stasis. So this exotic, on top of any other Strand builds that you might have forgotten about, may end up being pretty relevant for the Edge of Fate. That being said, you're going to be pretty locked in on Tangle-based fragments or just like generic ones. Thread of Fury might be in there, even though you can get your melee back somewhat reliably. Ascent, if you're doing grapple melee spamming. I could see Transmutation as some kind of a play if you're running with Warding, but remember that Warding is only 5 seconds on Woven Mail now. It has not been 10 for a while. Propagation also has some potential. Generation, always viable as well, although you shouldn't be using too many of your grapple charges because you're going to be hopefully grappling
this
to
is
tangles, which does not
I
cause
think.
your grenade cooldown to trigger. For solo play, this exotic is pretty fun. I did not try it in group play, but I'm guessing there might be a couple of similar pain points compared to the Titans exotic in that you do need a little bit of setup. The difference is that it's much easier to trigger a tangle, and you don't have to sit and watch your Maelstroms do damage. They just automatically do stuff. So it's probably going to be way better. That is your exotic armor preview. All in all, I think these exotics will definitely have their moments when they shine. I think Warlock is probably the most usable overall in the widest range of activities, even if it is the most boring of the bunch. Titans, again, your exotic's fun, but we're going to need to do some cooking to see if we can get these gloves to be a bit better outside of a solo, low to mid-tier difficulty environment. And Hunters, Whirling Maelstrom spam is pretty fun, and it's not too shabby for damage either, so I think there's plenty to work with there. Let me know what you're looking forward to messing around with.
Dude, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'm not excited for these exotics. Like the Warlock one I'm excited for, but I hope there's like, I hope we have like 3 more, maybe like 1 for each class. But these are, ugh. The, I could see a world where the hunter one, if you stacked like 2 or 3 of these, where it could like rip up a room full of enemies, maybe for like a nightfall, but I, I don't know. Not a fan. All right, YouTube, if you enjoyed this react, make sure to subscribe to the channel and come check us out on Twitch. And we'll see you in the next one.